All right, welcome back everybody for day 3 of $0 Landlord Free Bootcamp. This is where we are going to be teaching anything and everything you need to know in order to go buy property for no money down. And of course, it's free. It's not $15,000 like a course. We are doing this for free. So today we were talking about capital raising and team structures. If you haven't already seen day 1 and 2, then we're going to be covering a few concepts on there. I'll do a few circle backs on a few concepts that I think are really important, but for the most part, we're just going to charge on through. So. All right, in case you didn't already know from the previous 2 days was the boot camp. We are here to teach a high density free course that enables anybody to buy a multifamily property with $0 down. Purpose is to give value first. So if you need a business partner one day, you might remember me. And if not, then that's fine too. I want everybody to actually do well at the end of the day. I am here to make sure that you close deals, not to actually make money at the end of the day, because the cost here is 0. So if that isn't enough to let you know, then it is literally 0. And I got a lot of experience that I've done for some things, so I'll let you guys be the judge of what I am and am not good at by going on the website. And also you can go on the website and give me feedback in exchange for this free course. Just for 60 seconds is all I need. Just give me a little feedback on what we're doing here and how it's going down. So $0landlord.com/feedback. All right, quick stuff about me so you know if you care about what I'm saying or not. I bought a $250K mobile home park for $335K. That was a little while ago. That was $0 down, so it's not anything crazy, except for the fact that it was 100% seller financed. Fixed all the management issues in 75 days, which led to tripling the income, and we ended up having it appraised for $800K 1 year later. So that's 465K gain, over 2x the property, and we did that 100% remote without actually being to the property. I worked with 2 other partners, which is actually really important to cover today because this is what we're going to be talking about. It's team structuring. So I ended up having less work, but I had 40% ownership, so I still made $186K. And I do that for 1 hour a week on average for that deal, which is $3,500 an hour. So if you don't know what $3,500 an hour looks like, it's higher than the top 25 jobs in the U.S. combined times 1.5. Let me get out of the way here so you can see this nice pretty graph that I made for you. So I'm not saying this that I'm a gazillionaire. I'm saying this I at least work pretty efficiently. And I've done this over a dozen times. If you want to look at my track record of all my other deals, you go to $0landlord.com. All right, Rolf. Good Lord, I got more stuff about me? Oh my gosh. All right. I used to manage $7 billion of stuff for the Air Force, and I ended up doing multifamily property in August 2022. So I bought 8 figures of stuff. That was 300 units. And that was pretty much all $0 out of pocket. Bought 80% of the rentals between August 2023 and August 2024. And I'm top 200 mobile home park buyers in the U.S. according to that source. Again, if you need to see more, go to the website. And I partnered with 6 people to buy the first rentals for $0 down for free. And 4 out of 6 of those now have over 100 rentals in just 1 year. There's no catch. Let's actually go make money together. So, cool. On to today's stuff. So I'm leaving a couple of these blocks empty because I don't know how long these are going to take necessarily, but we're going to go see you together. So I think today we're probably going to end up doing this for about 45 minutes is my guess. So not as crammed as the day 1. So speaking of day 1, leverage. So leverage is the difference between what you put in versus what you get out. That's Alex Ramosi, if you didn't already know who he is. He's a very, very accomplished investor. And he talks about leverage a lot. So the main 3 that we're going to be covering is capital leverage, which is using money that you may or may not have in order to go do things. So borrow money to buy stuff. Time is the same principle. You can hire somebody else, for instance, to do work because you don't have enough time. And then finally, skill leverage. And skill leverage is really important. That we're going to be talking about this a lot today. So it's using people for what they are good at in order to get an even better result. So you, for instance, hiring somebody because you don't know how to do what they do. So we're going to talk about strategic partners. So you might remember general partner, which is somebody that works the deal and does a lot of sweat equity into the deal. Fully responsible for the company. And then you have limited partners, which are going to be the people that put in money and they don't have any responsibilities whatsoever. They sit on a beach, they make a good return, but they are taking on some risk in exchange for that. And then the last item was quote unquote debt partner, which again is just like a lender. It's not necessarily a literal partner. There is a 4th category, and that is strategic partners. And I don't see this one talked about that often, except maybe in the private equity space. So strategic partners, well, let's talk about what a GP was again. It costs profit to work a deal. So if there's 3 people on a deal and it's $300K profit, and we add a 4th, everybody's dollar goes down, right? It goes from $100K to $300K divided by 4, which is like whatever that is, right? An SP improves the profit in order to pay for themselves. So that would be, in that scenario, if it's $100K per person, for 3 people, then if an SP came on board, it might actually increase the dollar amount because an SP comes on board. And that's really the key distinction. And it might not necessarily be specifically dollar as the resource in question. It might be efficiency, it might be time, it might be something else that you need. Usually it's going to be money. That's the best way to put it. So if a employee covered their entire year salary and cost savings in like day one, of course you're going to want to hire a lot of people like that, right? So that'd be like an example of an SP kind of. So they're very experienced. They act as an on-call consultant, strategic director, but they're not really doing the day-to-day type of operations. They just help out on the very specific thing that you need. So think about like a sniper rifle, basically, right? Bank and equity funding is typically easier as well, because if you have a strategic partner, they're able to get you past a lot of the day one questions that people are going to be normally asking, like, hey, have you ever bought anything before? No. It's like, okay, great. Well, then you should probably have a strategic partner. So wherever you are on the food chain, just get somebody way higher than you, basically, is what this means. And then also opens doors for higher level relationships and more profitable deals. So here's a quick case study. There's a lot of information on here, so I'm going to let you take a second to look at it. Right, beforehand, we had a list price, and this is all expressed in thousands as well, right? So this is 1 million if you see 1,000 on there. So the list price was about $1 million. The buy price was $900K. And make sure to, by the way, make sure to look on the video if you're not seeing anything on here. So the buy price was like $900K, property value $900K. So price equals value, right? Down payment 40%. And then you get all the way down here, you see profit per general partner was $100K. And then company count would be like $100K as well, right? So $100,000 profit per partner, pretty good. This is what it looks like with an SP, all right? Again, I want to just let this sit here. This is a big chunky slide. I apologize on that. But the bottom line is it's 86% more profit per GP with the extra partner on there, right? So they already paid for themselves on day one and increased that profit for everybody. So number of partners went from 3 to 4, but then your highest experience was a lot higher. And that's really important because you're able to get a down payment for maybe 25%, right? So the bank loan is going to be a little bit higher, bank interest. And then also the SP was able to bring on a seller finance loan. And because the seller finance loan that came on, then they were able to get in for negative down payment, right? So before you had to raise capital for $360K, but now you had to get paid to buy stuff, right? That's a little weird. Right, so that's insanely good. As a result, dollars needed from a limited partner. You didn't even need it, right? Did not even have to have the $100,000 raised, but just decided to have it anyway. So look at the percent to the limited partners went from 70% all the way down to 17.5%. So the percent of the GPs went from 30% up to 82.5%. And this is also like probably 5 hours worth of work of just knowing how to structure stuff correctly and just being able to get a better bank loan term than anybody else. Right? This is a real case study. I was the SP on this deal, right? So you can see all my other stuff. I got some other good stories, and this is not designed to be a pitch on, hey, come work with me or whatever, right? Like I was really upfront about that at the beginning is if you find some of this stuff valuable, you may consider me like that, but this is not specifically about, hey, let's go partner with John Bartlett. I want you to partner with whoever you need to partner with. I just want to point out the fact that an SP will actually improve the situation. So here's what SPs typically can do is they can typically bring limited partner connections, which allows you to fund deals very, very quickly and for a lot better deals. Tax structuring as well, because they're more experienced. They have better ways to approach problems. Also, risk mitigation is way lower because if you learn on your dime for the first time versus you're learning off of somebody else's very seasoned dime, it's quite better. You have a better acquisition for deal structuring, just like we talked about. Better acquisition through due diligence because you know what to look for because you have a more experienced person on the team. Through negotiation, it turns out better. Through the bank terms, it turns better. Personal cash flow will be better because the person you're bringing on board probably has better finances than you if they're higher skill level. It's just the reality of how it is. Seller finance terms are better through negotiating. The relationship will be better throughout the deal, which is actually really important sometimes. If you have a seller finance transaction and they're not in a good headspace, then that's not something you want to be working with. And they usually have way, way, way better systems. And they know how to do stuff and what not to do, right? So if an SP has spent 10,000 hours doing something and you can get paid to bring them on board, you should probably do that because this is my favorite question to ask. How much does it cost to not know how to make $1 million? It costs you $1 million, right? So just use an SP for whatever fits you. So Here's some other stuff, right? Everybody needs an SP. And this is the equivalent of saying this is a mentor that you bring on board for your actual deal. Because there's always bigger fish, right? It just depends on what exactly it is. So for Alex Ramosi, that's his whole profit model is give first. People come back later on. They say, hey, I really need this, right? This is the one thing I need. I need better lead outreach. I need, better social media, whatever. So SPs pay for themselves, so it's worth it at the end of the day. Again, a GP technically costs money, but it makes it more efficient potentially. But an SP actually adds to the project, and they're very unique in that regard. So for instance, Brandon, Investment Joy, I'll get out of the way here so you can see it. He's got 2 million subscribers, right? And he's bought, 150 units or something like that in like 2 mobile home parks. So I'm partnered up with him because I have more mobile home park experience. And I don't have 2 million subscribers, but I would really like it. Whoops. Wow, I didn't include the dollar amount on here, but it's $750,000 is what he's getting. Right? I just want that to sink in for a second. I want this guy's help, so I'm willing to give him $750,000 worth of profit. Could have kept it, but instead I need a strategic partner, and he's going to end up paying huge dividends at the end of the day. And this particular individual, Brandon, or the Investment Joy that is, his roofing company has gone up by like a factor of 20 million in like 1 year. So if I ever wanted to go buy a roofing company, I already have the perfect guy to work with, right? That's a strong relationship at the end of the day. That's stuff that you really want to be keeping an eye out for. All right. Now we're going to be talking about capital raising. So hopefully we covered strategic partners. So find whoever it is, whatever amount it is. I recommend try to go as high as you possibly can get with a strategic partner, and then be willing to take whatever you can get. But you can also play it by just saying, hey, I'm going to partner with somebody who's been doing this a week longer than I have, and I'm going to go 50-50. That's fine too. So it's whatever it is you can do, just try to reach as high up the ladder as possible because it will expedite your growth. All right, now we're going to be talking about capital raising. So if you remember from yesterday, which was day 2, we were talking about the Ramosi Value Formula. And again, I love Alex Ramosi. That's why he's on that slide. So Alex Ramosi has this insanely awesome definition of value, which is dream outcome times perceived likelihood of achievement divided by time delay times effort and sacrifice, right? So you got the top line, which is all the good stuff. And then you got the bottom line, which is all the bad stuff pretty much. And everybody focuses on making the top line as good as possible. But the easiest trick for sales is actually just reducing the bottom line, right? Find the pain and find a way to reduce it. So I'll give you some example. No one wants to deal with the following pain points that might take forever, right? Time delay and effort and sacrifice. An inexperienced operator lowers the perceived likelihood of achievement. A low return is going to have a low dream outcome, right? If it's just simply not as good of a deal. A low certainty of pro forma, lower likelihood of achievement. Issues with no solution, right? Hey, here's the problem with the property that we're buying. Oh, great. How are you going to fix it? I don't know. I've never done that before, right? Lowers perceived likelihood of achievement. Signing of the debt. If you literally can't qualify for the loan and you're a limited partner and your limited partner has to sign on the loan, they're not going to like that. They don't like you for that, right? The general partners are the ones that are supposed to sign for the debt typically, not the limited partners. The limited partners are not supposed to sign for that. So if you literally can't qualify with a bank, you are causing a lot more effort and sacrifice for a limited partner, right? If you are missing info on your freaking pitch deck, that is the worst ever. I hate that one so much, right? High effort and sacrifice plus time delay. I get DMs constantly on people trying to have me review their stuff, but the fact they can't even bother to do the work themselves and they're missing information, but they expect me to go do it for them? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that, right? Why on earth is that high value to me whatsoever? There's nothing in it even for me to help them, right? I'm not saying I need $1 at the end of the day, but it's like they're not even willing to help themselves. I'm certainly not going to answer their question, right? So it doesn't matter what the situation is. You can always use the value formula, but particularly with capital raising, you have to have your information ready. Right? So laziness allows everybody else to leverage against you, right? So it's like if you're not where you want to be in your business, it's because you're not using leverage to your advantage. And there's lots of different types of leverage, but information leverage, or in this case, just having your ducks in a row, basically, that's going to be what really seals the deal easier, right? So we're going to take a look at this listing here. This is a real thing off of Zillow, right? So got a weird price. 66600. I don't know what's up with that. 4-bed, 2-bath, 1484 square foot. And I love that description. This is a duplex. And I see property owner, but there's no phone. So how on earth am I supposed to put in an offer for this? How on earth am I supposed to understand what the issues are? There's no other photos, right? So it's high effort to get the info because there's no phone. You assume the missing info is bad because there is no info, right? I'm not going to assume it's best case scenario. I'm going to be a little bit pessimistic. Maybe I'm going to get all the information at the end of the day. And I can't decide until I get the info. And I highlighted that red box right there to show that there's a price cut. So this matters. This guy's value is literally dropped because, again, the value is perception, right? So the price versus value, people look at it and they say, dude, that's overpriced. And as a result, he's had to drop his price. Would anybody here want to fund this? Probably not, right? Nobody would probably want to buy it either because it has no information. It is going to take far too much work, right? Anyway, if you feel like you're learning, great. If you are not, then please come off mute and say, I know everything, right? Otherwise, you can go online, pay me, and 60 seconds of feedback, whether it's good or bad, at $0landlord.com/feedback. And then make sure to join the email list and community for learning, networking, deal reviews. We do this every single week. And then please tell me if you found this valuable. I do actually care about your feedback. I really want to make sure this is the best possible content we can get. If something does not make sense, I want to know about it. Okay, so we talked about value pitch. We talked about strategic partners, right? Strategic partners add to the deal. And then when you are selling something or if you're capital raising, you have got to have all your information ready is the main point of paying for pretty much everybody. So have all your information ready. If you don't know the answer to something, you had better go find it before you even bother to open your mouth to ask a question or like pitch a deal or do whatever, right? But outside of that, there are other factors you can do to make things a little easier. So now we're going to talk about capital structures, and this is where it'll start to make a little bit more sense on why we talked about all the pain points from the value formula, right? So you can structure, by the way, this is capital structures. You can do it any way that you decide to at the end of the day. These are just what is typically done, right? So it's like saying, hey, I'm going to go on a run. It's like if you're in the US, you're probably measuring that in miles. It doesn't mean that you have to. It just means that you probably are going to end up measuring it in miles because that's how most people think, in the US at least, right? So for capital structures, we can structure as debt plus equity. We could do that in that situation. A limited partner gives a loan against the property, and then they get a percent of equity in exchange for funding the property, right? So that means you got to pay them back, and then they get a percentage of ownership on top of that. There's straight equity, which is there's no loan. There's just a percent partner from the get-go, and they are really betting on you doing well. There is capped equity, which is where a limited partner is a percent partner of it, but you limit how high they can go. This is basically the same as saying you have the ability to buy them back out at a certain price point. So you could say, hey, you can't earn more than a 40% return annual. Otherwise, I could buy you back at whatever 40% annual looks like. Right? And then there's preferred return, which is basically just a private loan. So it just makes sure that all the payments go to that person first. And it's pretty straightforward, right? It's just a loan. You might see these referred to as slightly different terms or use different vernacular. There's not really like a standardized database of like this is what is accepted everywhere. But debt plus equity is a pretty common structure, and preferred return is pretty common as well. And then finally, customs. Just do it however it is you want. If it makes sense for everybody, at the end of the day, it's going to work. It's going to get funded. All right, I get this question a lot on what's a good split. So if you're learning, which honestly I should add this on there, is if you're learning on your first deal, you should literally be willing to work for free, but you should take obviously the highest offer that you get. That's just because it's most important to get the first deal done rather than like make a ton of money on it. So, but when you do have a good deal or whatever else, then for GP-LP splits, which is your general partner or limited partner splits, what I personally do is I tend to do it so that it's about a 2 to 3x over 2 to 3 years, right? So it's whatever percent that looks like. So it's approximately 20 to 40% annualized, and that's like the money in, how much is that compounding at? So it's about 20 to 40%, right? So if you thought 12% interest was high, like, you know, limited partners are a lot more expensive, but they make your deals go faster. So an invested rate of return is going to be your future value divided by your current value, right? It just gets bigger over time. It's not specifically annualized unless you decide to go out and annualize it. Otherwise, it's just saying what's the money out divided by the money that you put in. A lot of limited partners think it's typical to do 30% to general partners and 70% to limited partners. I would encourage you to break through this because the reason why they say that is they are probably used to investing in mid-level deals that aren't that great, that are all cash, no leverage, right? What that means is it's not a massive return at the end of the day, Like what I'm trying to advocate that you all should be doing is looking for the massive deals, right? So this assumes no debt, and it's just a typical deal. So here's a really good case study here. This is also going to be, I think I talk about SPs here for a second. So purchase price was about $650K. Actually, I don't know if this is, I'll have to tab through in order to see if this is actual. Yeah, it is. Okay, great. So it was about $650K. Pro forma value was about 1.2, so that's about $550K profit overall, right? So then an SP is able to score awesome terms. So that's 95% seller financing, 5K seller credit, 40K private debt. Right, so it's 27.5K cash to close. Right, so this is very good seller financing here, and 27.5K for rainy day reserves. Right, remaining 15K can a limited partner, and then some limited partners want 70% equity on that. Right. So why would you 70% equity on, like for what, 15K? You're going to take 70% of the $550,000 profit for 15K? I don't think so. That'd be 25x. That's why that's not a typical, like, throw the 30-70 out the window, right? General partners would have made 120K each over 3 years. So SP ended up negotiating to 4.2% equity, right? So not 40% equity, or not 70% equity to limited partners, 4.2% equity to limited partners. And limited partners still making a good return, right? So you just got to do what actually makes sense, and don't be afraid to, stand your ground on it at the end of the day with your limited partners. But don't be unrealistic on thinking that they are only going to accept a 10% return, right? You should be willing to give them a lot of money, but you need to be looking for deals that make way more money at the end of the day, right? 15K in for 550K profit out, it's a pretty good return. So SP, you got a 3.1x better deal for the GPs, so it's 380K over 3 years, right? Again, SPs pay for themselves. Use SP. I don't care who you use, just use an SP. Unless you know everything, in which case, good for you. And then you're Alex Mosey. So, all right. So here's some typical partner roles that you're going to see. And this is all in what's known as an operating agreement. So an operating agreement dictates like the rules and laws of the company, essentially. So if you buy a property, you're buying it in a company, is the best way to do it. So you'll just create an LLC, and then the company is bought through that LLC. Now the rules and laws of the LLC are defined in the operating agreement. And this is where you define stuff like your partner roles. This is a huge mistake that most people don't do, is they do not specify the actual roles and responsibilities of the partners of the company. They just say 50% owner, and they don't even specify what they're supposed to do in exchange for 50%, right? This is what you guys should never, ever do, is not specify. So make sure to specify, like I'm about to show you here. So here's the typical roles and responsibilities. So you usually have like acquisition lead. So it's going to be initially acquiring stuff, right? It's coordinating the selling part of the DD, drives the execution and funding strategy, right? They're there to acquire stuff. Then you got the workflow that kind of sort of works like a director of operations / CEO. So that's ensuring tasks are, running smoothly. And then whenever you see the board, that means GPs. So just basically somebody's got to run the drum, so to speak, to make sure that tasks are actually getting done. Strategic is going to be making an execution plan of what the company is trying to do. Are we selling? Are we refinancing? What's going on with that? So just make sure that everything is in line with the strategic vision. And then you have LP relations. Who's the guy talking to the guys with a bunch of money, right? Because they need updates on what's going on with the property every now and then. So somebody's going to be making those reports. Somebody's got to be handling those phone calls. Somebody's got to be getting the deal initially funded as well. So it's usually going to be an LP, relations POC. All right, then you got financial one as well. So it's like anything to do with banks, bills, properties, etc. Creates, all the nerd stuff basically, right? So if you like Excel, that's for you. And then taxes is if you like getting really in the weeds on some tax code stuff, then tax lead would probably also be for you. And then legal as well. There's a reasonable amount of legal issues that can happen over time. It's nothing to be like afraid of. It's just evictions are like 98% of it. But you have to like do that through a legal system. So you need a legal POC as well. All right. So disposition POC is the person that's getting rid of the property at the end of the day. And then if you're doing refinance instead of a sale, then that's typically done by that person as well. And then miscellaneous POC is incredibly good to specify so that if there's not defined on the other roles, then it's this person's responsibility, right? So this just cuts down on most of the chatter of, who's doing what. Then you also have management POC, which is just handling the managers, and it just triages all the stuff from the managers. So, management companies will still have questions at the end of the day, like, hey, do you want us to repair XYZ, right? Somebody's got to handle those emails. And then CapEx as well. That's like your repairs. Repairs are improvements to the park. So if you're doing any rehabs of a unit, or not park specifically, but just a property. But if you have a unit that needs to be rehabbed, like somebody's got to define what right looks like. And then you also have an administrative POC, which is, or lead. And when I say POC, I mean point of contact, by the way. Your administrative one is going to be whoever is handling all the files, because there's a lot of stuff on the back end that can happen with files. All right, and then lastly, you got email POC, which is who's answering the emails. So what we typically do is we will set up a new email every time we buy a company or buy a property. It just keeps the workflow a little easier, and everybody has the same sign-in. And then lastly, you have property manager. Now, property manager is not part of the company. It's highly recommended that you don't have your partner be the manager either, because it gets really tough to fire them if they suck. So I've done that on 2 different instances. One of the times it did not work out very well at all, and the other time it's doing okay. So, but generally speaking, I've seen a lot of horror stories if you have a partner also be the actual property manager at the end of the day. So this is your corporate world equivalent for anybody that speaks corporate. It's like CIO, COO, CEO, et cetera, right? And technically, I guess like CEO would be more like Chief Strategy Officer, but yeah, that's how you typically want to do. That's kind of what the equivalent is. And then this is how you should do it based off of experience. In my experience, is how you should do it off of do it off of these experience levels, right? So if you're the most qualified and most experienced person, should probably handle the green categories. Second most in the yellow, third most in the red, and then PM's not even on there. All right, so team structure. So financially, is usually in everyone's best interest to have the green ones go to an SP, because if they're the one getting the funding, you probably want them to be running that. Also, if they're the one that running the main strategy and the initial acquisition, you also want them to be doing that, right? Maybe they're going to get a killer seller finance term on there because they're doing some strategy you haven't even heard of, right? Seller in second position on just the whatever, right? There's lots of different ways that you want the most experienced person. If I was going to go out tomorrow and go buy a shopping mall, I'm going to go find an SP that is really good at shopping malls, right? And that's going to be, I'm going to say, okay, whatever you say is best, we're going to follow your lead on that, right? But I'm going to do my due diligence to make sure the person is actually legit before I just, promise my life away to this person. And then for any of these number 2 categories, like if you're handling finances or dispo or anything that's in the miscellaneous category, for instance, you probably want to have some experience before you do that. So that's usually the number 2 most experienced person goes there. And then the number 3, I put these in red just because it's like a stoplight basically, but it's not like there's like a good or bad spot. But number 3 is the best way, because you're at the front line of everything, right? You're the one dealing initially with contractors. You're dealing with every file that comes through, and you're also dealing with all the issues that don't make it through the manager, or that get through the manager, right? So it's the best place to learn. And what I'm showing here is what they're worth on shares. I would recommend that you always try to have your partnership be as even as possible, because if you have one person have 98% equity and the other has 2% equity, good luck trying to get the 2% guy to do anything. Right, so you actually want your percentages to be about the same, but I'm just telling you this is what they're worth, right? So just pick a percentage in between there. And then your PM, your property manager, is not actually a partner, but they'll usually end up taking 10% of rent. Okay, so now we kind of covered a couple of those roles. There's not the standardized MLS way to do team structure or anything like that, right? This is just what I've done over multiple deals, over multiple different properties, over multiple years. And this is just what I found that's worked out very, very well. It's just been getting better and better every time. What you do want to do is do backups, right? So if the acquisition guy is out of office, then who's handling the acquisition stuff? Right, and vice versa. And there's just a bunch of other issues that can pop up. So you usually want to do a 1, 2, 3. So that's what we call it here. So we literally do first responsible, and if first is not able, then second will handle, and if second's not able, then third will handle. And then we say explicitly, this guy's not responsible at all, or they're 1, 2, 3. Right. So this is a very clear chart. If I am person B, I know exactly what I'm responsible for, and I know exactly who I need to go double check to make sure they're doing their job. Right, because if number 1's just screwing around, not doing their job, or they're got hit by a bus or whatever, it's somebody's got to pick up that workload at the end of the day. So that would be immediately by default number 2. And there's no squabble about, well, who's doing it? I don't want to do the work. It's dude, that's what you signed. This is the operating agreement. Go stick to that. Right. And apologies for the lack of animations on that. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Thought I was going to sneeze, so All right. It is usually best to have 3 partners. And here's a little chart on the right to show you. I've done multiple different combinations. I would highly recommend that you do 3 partners as a total. So that's 2 GPs plus an SP. That's generally what I would recommend. If you have 1 person, then you're just always on call, right? If you are the only one that owns that property and everybody's like, oh, I want to go buy property, but I want to own it all by myself. You don't. Trust me. You literally don't. You are always going to be on call for issues. So, oh, geez. There it is. I knew a sneeze was coming. All right. You're always going to be on call for issues. So if you're skiing down a mountain slope and you're having a good time and then the phone picks up and it's your tenant complaining about like, oh my gosh, the water's leaking everywhere. Dude, you got to stop your entire day and go handle that. It's 12 o'clock at night. You got to go handle it, right? You don't ever get a break. At the very least, it's like you can schedule saying, hey guys, I'm going to be out of office, and then the number 2 guy can pick up, right? That's why you want to have at least, more than one person on a deal. And if you have 2 people, what I've seen that typically happens is one person is going to do more than the other, or one person is going to be, more driven in whatever category. So it's difficult with 2 unless you know who you're working with, or unless you guys have very distinct roles that are like literally never going to overlap, right? So 2 can work. It's just you have to be diligent as the 2 of y'all to make sure that you don't run into a abusive type situation. So an example of an abusive situation is, if I partnered with, I don't know, Grant Cardone. It's like, you think Grant Cardone is going to do 50% of the work? Absolutely not, right? He's going to just say, nope, I'm good, see ya. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe I'm the freeloader instead, right? It's 1v1. It's very different. So you want to make sure you're not allowing those types of situations to happen. So that's why 2's possible to do, but you just really got to know who you're working with. And it likely will deteriorate over time unless you do constant maintenance on it. Right? So relationships are just like properties. If you just take out of the account constantly, it's not going to be good. You have to put something back in routinely, weekly, all the time, be available to communicate, etc. 3 persons the sweet spot that I've found personally, and that maybe that's just a personality thing with me. But I've seen the most success for most people usually when there's 3 people. Because you get collective wisdom at that point. Everybody gets to use skill leverage. And we talked about skill leverage on day 1 on like how people are able to work more efficiently if they have other people on the deal. Because maybe one guy is really good at finance and one guy's really good at admin and one guy's really good at contractors. Good. They can just do those 3 roles and they all do them in half the time it would take, versus if you have everybody switch roles, they're not going to do it very efficiently at all. So with 3 people is kind of a sweet spot there. And that dynamic will last usually over several deals. Right, so on the right side there, you see in the green cells, 43% of my units were bought that way, and then 33% on the deals. And it's funny that it went down to a third exactly. So, 4-person dynamic is too much chance for debating, and it usually slows things down a little bit. But it's okay if it's a really large deal or if there's like some special situation. So you can also do if you have a good 3-person dynamic, but you just need an outside person, you could do a 3-person GP plus 1 SP. That is okay too. But you just want your core group to be generally about 3 people. And then lastly, 5-person, I think it's just ridiculous. I don't think I've ever even seen that, but I cannot imagine that would be fun for anybody. So just get employees at that point. All right, so I made this literally just before we got on here. I want everybody to go check this out at some point. This is a file architecture system that we use on our properties, and this is exactly how we stay super organized on everything. And actually I have a nice, there's a secondary tool in there, which is actually a file tree generator, which I'll show you in a second. But yeah, properties have a lot of files. So if you got 100 units, you got 100 work orders every year. You got 100 leases, you got 100 applications, you got a ton of files all over the place, right? And then you got all your corporate stuff. If you're wholesale, you have 1 file. Right? Very simple, but it's not the same, right? You got a pitch deck and the contract maybe, but you're not actually getting in the weeds of the guts of the operation whatsoever. So if you are in the guts of the operation, you do want to stay organized because you are working with other people usually, right? And if you are the only one that knows everything and it's only in your head, it's ridiculous of you to ask other people to do jobs that interface with that information, right? So you got to have a standardized file architecture. And we've used this and iterated it over time, so it works really, really well because everybody can coordinate and they know exactly where everything's at. Here's the link for it, by the way, because I have not published this to the official. Whoops, sorry, I'm blocking the QR, I think. Oh no, it's right there. If you go and you follow that URL, you can type it in if you're on a computer. So it's zero.landlord.com/resources/file tree. or you can go to that QR code, and that will give you the download for the Excel version for that. I would highly, highly, highly recommend you organize all your files this way. And you can actually get really big picture and organize your life this way. So like I organize my photos really well. I organize all my personal files really well too, because I use something like this. And I'm normally actually very disorganized unless I force myself. But I want to make it really easy on you guys, so I'm just going to give you the system. So, and there's like 7 main categories too, by the way. There's more than just what's shown on here. All right. That was a lot of information. I think we're doing pretty good on time. So I'm going to go through on the Q&A just by answering myself here, just for sake of simplicity. And then we'll be able to take some more questions after. So the 3 main types of leverage is going to be capital, time, and skill. We talked a lot about skill leverage on this particular lesson. Again, it's anybody that you have that has skill that you want. That's who you need to go partner with typically for an SP. Just make sure they are actually going to check the box that you need checked, not the one that you just, you like them because they're your buddy or whatever. Just make sure they're actually helping you out. What is an SP? Is somebody that pays for themselves is honestly the best definition. Well, actually, okay, I got to that in question 3. But yeah, it's a highly skilled GP that can do very specific work, and is usually going to be stuff on the front end, right? So it's going to be like acquisition or like negotiation with the seller, or it's going to be, how do you set everything up, right? That's typically where you're going to want your SP, running the strategic mission of the property or whatever. So you don't want them, button mashing the email all day, because it's just going to frustrate them and you're not going to get a second deal. And an SP, by definition, should not cost anything. They should be bringing in money and make it better for everybody. Otherwise, why are you even bothering to bring them on? Right? How can SP help? Whole lots of different ways. We covered a lot of those, but the main thing is what not to do, right? This is if you're dealing with a lot of money, it's really easy to screw things up, unless you know what not to do. So usually having somebody that's there that could be a resource that's very involved with you is ideal. If you want like little bits of resource and stuff, comparatively a little bit, then servers like here is great, right? I can answer Q&A questions all the time, but if you need somebody that's like really going to be like on board for years, you need to partner with them. They're not just going to help forever. What's the formula to keep in mind when raising capital is the value formula. And the main thing is include all the gosh darn information, because it is the most frustrating thing in the world if somebody says, hey, check out my deal, and they don't have any of their info ready. All right, 4 main capital structures is usually going to be debt plus equity, straight equity, capped equity, and preferred return. And the typical roles in a partnership are going to be your most skilled roles. Again, it's not saying that like others are trash roles. It's just this is typically where you want to put the highest skilled person is in acquisition, workflow, strategic, and LP relations. Requires more skill is going to be finance, tax, legal, dispo, and miscellaneous. And then if you want to learn the fastest, then you want to be on the front line of stuff. So that's going to be handling the management company. So you're the manager, POC. CapEx, which is you're handling the rehab. Administrative, because you get to see all the files of everything that goes on. And then email, because you get to see everything that goes on as well. So hopefully that makes sense of like why we say that's the fastest learning is because it's on the front line like that. All right, ideal number of people for partnership is 3. That is what I would recommend. So that's 2 GPs plus a SP. You can do you can always go up higher. So more partners is okay. You just don't want to have less partners typically. So it's either 3 or 4. That's my recommendation at least, but take it for what you want. You can actually take time out of office that way, and you have backup people to do stuff. And then the real reason why you want this is because you can have skill leverage for everybody, right? You actually get to execute on skill leverage. So if you are really good at talking to people, then you should probably be like management or email POC, right? If you're like really technical, then you should probably be doing the finance or legal stuff, right? So, but if you switch those roles and you got the wrong guy doing the wrong thing, it's going to take everybody longer, and it's going to be a worse outcome. And then lastly is you got collective decision making that you can have, and then also the partnership will last longer. So if you're going to put a lot of time into creating a relationship, you may as well get the most out of it. And basically it prevents an abusive relationship, which can occur with 2 people unless you are really, really diligent as a team. Okay, this is a practice. I don't actually have a practice problem for today. I apologize on that. But what I did do is I did create that file architecture system. So what you can do for practice is I would encourage you to take your current folder or Google Drive folders of stuff, and I want you to go organize it. But the way I want you to organize, I'll show you in just a second here, is going to be based, or at least inspired off of the file architecture system that I have given online for free there. So, yep, that is the last slide. So let me just show this real fast, and then we'll get into Q&A. So this is kind of what you'll be looking at. Let me scroll in here. and I'm just going to reduce that for a second. All right, so this is kind of what it looks like, right? So you got your LLC folder, and then within there, you got a bunch of stuff, like your LLC docs, you got your LLC agreements, and I'll go back to the last slide here in just a second, by the way. And you got like your miscellaneous agreements, you got your personal info on people, because you're going to need like driver's licenses for stuff. Like, it's just, you got to have this stuff on hand, a letterhead, etc. If there's a potential lawsuit coming in, you want to have that organized. If you're in the acquisition phase, like, you're going to have the acquisition folder, and that's going to be like your original information from the person. Where's the PSA located, guys? Oh, well, here, it's under the PSA folder, right? It's very, very clear where it's at. You want a live folder typically if you're raising capital, because you want that to be publicly shared. But you got to make sure that's different than like your not live folder, because if you're making edits, you don't want that getting impacted. Bank documents, there's a very particular way that they want to have information typically. So if you want to make it fast with a bank, you want to use last names frequently, or companies. Property doc, where's the PSA? Closing docs, where's the closing documents, guys? Right, your title company, or your closing company rather, will have we'll have all these documents ready later. But when you go to do taxes, it's going to be a nightmare if you can't find stuff. Especially if you keep it organized throughout the year, it makes it a lot easier. So finance folder, you got that. Accounts folder, like, where's the water bill go? Where's the trash bill go? Where's the lawn care agreement go? Because you got a contract with the lawn care guy, right? There's a lot of stuff to think about. So I try to make it really easy for you by putting a lot of the main categories there. We usually have our management folder is typically shared. And that's going to be, so the management company will have access to that one folder and that one folder only. And that's where they put all the leases and stuff. And it's like, this is how to name the leases. Property records, where do we put the photos? Put them in there. Like, keep it really organized. But you don't have to get big brain every time. You can just go copy this basically, and then just make sure you're making it fit. Disposition, when you go to sell stuff, you're going to get a lot of offers on things. You got to keep those organized. What did that guy offer? I don't remember, right? Those are the things that are going to cost you a lot of money. And then last thing is, we try our best not to delete files. Actually, we just move them to a trash folder, because you might end up needing it later, right? But we want it out of the way, so we just move it there. So go download this thing. I think it's really helpful. We use it all the time. And this is the file structure. The other thing that I have on here is, one second. Whoops, apologies on that. Resources/file tree. Right, the other thing I have on here is this file tree generator. And yes, the script is safe. You can run it, but what it will do is it will prompt you and it will say like, hey, are you sure you want to run it? Go check out the code if you want, but what it does is file tree generator, right? So I can literally just put a URL for a Google Drive folder in there, and I go up to file tree and I say generate new tree, and then you can hit yes on the prompt. And what it will do is it will just go through and it will it will organize everything in a manner that you can actually see it, and then it will hyperlink it so you can get to it quickly, and it will show you, hey, it's shared with these people. So you might accidentally have the wrong sharing permission on there, and somebody else is like looking at your PSA by accident, right? So it's like, you got to keep some information secure. Like, you don't want everybody in the world to have access to your leases, for instance. So it's actually good to be able to spot things like that. Or if you have somebody leave your partnership, you might need to go back later on and remove them. So this is really, really helpful to do stuff like that. Or if you're renaming a lot of leases all at the same time, then there's a renaming function in there as well. So if you just type in whatever you want it named to, and you'll go up to file tree and then you'll hit rename, then it does the exact same thing. It'll just go through and it renames it all. It's going to ask you for a lot of permissions because it does it for your personal Google Drive. But again, check out the code yourself, run it through ChatGPT. Says like, hey, is this going to delete everything I have? Is this guy scamming me? And you make your own decision on it. But yeah, I just made this the other day and I thought it's pretty cool and I use it a lot now. So, I'm hoping it'll take a second to go through. It takes 1.5 seconds usually per item. So if it's like a lot of stuff in there, it'll take a while, but, and I will continue to publish updates on this to make it even better. Like I want to have a function to remove users as well. Gosh darn. Well, I'm hoping it will. There it is. Right. So it just generated everything that's in that folder, and it just showed exactly how it's in there. Right, so every single one of these, and it's all linked, so I can like click on it and I go straight to the book. And if I wanted to rename it, I just go into rename, and it will rename that file. The actual file itself will be renamed. So it's pretty groovy. All right, cool. Let me go back over here because this is specifically requested. So this is day 3 of the boot camp. So you can go to day 4 if you are watching on YouTube, etc. Then just make sure to go to the Discord server, and then or to go to $0landlord.com. and then it's also under /training. If you guys want the slide deck for today, it is going to be located at that URL. You cannot navigate to that through the website. You have to type that in. So you can go to Bootcamp, but you can't see the CRTS sub URL there. And that's going to give you access for today's slide deck and today's practice problems. Additionally, you can just scan the QR code and it's a little quicker. So yeah, that's about everything I got. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and hopefully all the microphone settings work this time. So, all right.